Hello and welcome to this continuing First Look exploring session looking at Northward Ho, sundry times acted by the Children of Paul's by Thomas Dekker and John Webster. We are about a third of the way through the play. We're about to start the second half of Act 2, Scene 2 we're going on from, and we've had a lot to chew over on this play. We've not been wholly uncritical. There's lots of questions about transmission for this play to the modern day, stuff that may disappear and not work, and things that may be a little too fiddly and complicated. And also, as ever, the perennial problem for any comedy, which is, will it end in a way that we won't find tragic? But we won't know that till the end of the next session. Let's see whether the complications of the plot take us forward in ways that we enjoy. So reading today, Mayberry, and of course the inevitable Squirrel is...
Sarah Blake, actor, writer and director based in Germany.
Reading Kate and Doll today is...
Alexandra, still in the bust.
Reading Wife and Philip is...
Lois in London.
Reading Liverpool is...
Rachel in Canada.
Reading Bellamont is...
I'm Greg, and I'm still feeling remarkably warm for Christmas.
Reading Featherstone and Captain is...
Hi, I'm Eric. I'm just impressed that now there are 3 women in the play, one of whom does not have a name.
Yes, well, I don't know. Does Doll actually technically have a name? Did we get a name last time for Doll? We did, didn't we?
It's Dorothy.
Dorothy, we did, yes. So yes, we're working on the name front. We're getting there. Reading Greenshield and Allum is...
Hello, I'm Lynn. I'm in the Northwestern United States, and this is Scooter.
Yay. And reading Tailor, Leapfrog and Servant is...
Alan in Suffolk.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will be reading stage directions and generally moving us forward and hopefully keeping everything vaguely on track. So, starting with Act 2, Scene 2, we have the entrance of Bellamont, Mayberry, and Mistress Mayberry into the scene.
Come, wife. Our 2 gallants will be here presently. I have promised them the best of entertainment, with protestation never to reveal to thee their slander. I will have thee bear thyself as if thou madest a feast upon Simon and Jude's day to country gentlewomen that came to see the pageant. Bid them extremely welcome, though thou wish their throats cut. 'Tis in fashion.
God, I shall never endure them.
Endure them? You're a fool! Think in your case as it may be many women's of the freedom that you had a friend in private whom your husband should lay to his bosom, and he in required should lay his wife to his bosom. What treads of the toe, salutations by winks, discourse by bitings of the lip, amorous glances, sweet stolen kisses, when your husband's back's turned, would pass between you. Bear yourself to Greenshield as if you did love him for affecting you so entirely and taking any notice of his journey. They'll put more tricks upon you. You told me Greenshield means to bring his sister to your house to have her board here.
Right. She's some cracked demi-culverin that hath miscarried in service. No matter. Though it be some charge to me for a time, I care not.
Lord, was there ever such a husband?
Why? Wouldst thou have me suffer their tongues to run at large in ordinaries and cockpits? Though the knaves do lie, I tell you, Master Bellamont, lies that come from stern looks and satin outsides and gilt rapiers also would be put up and go for current.
Right, sir. 'Tis a small spark gives fire to a beautiful woman's discredit.
I will therefore use them like informing knaves in this kind. Make up their mouths with silver, and after be revenged upon them. I was in doubt I should have grown fat of late, and it were not for lawsuits and fear of our wives, we rich men should grow out of all compass. They come.
Enter Greenshield and Featherstone.
My worthy friends, welcome. Look, my wife's colour rises already.
You have not made her acquainted with the discovery.
Oh, by no means. You see, gentlemen, the affection of an old man, I would fain make all whole again. Wife, give entertainment to our new acquaintance. Your lips, wife. Any woman may lend her lips without her husband's privity. It is allowable.
You are very welcome. I think it be near dinner time, gentlemen. I'll will the maid to cover and return presently.
And exit wife.
Just where does she leave them?
Oh, I know her stomach. She is but retired into another chamber to ease her heart with crying a little. It hath ever been her humour. She hath done it 5 or 6 times in a day, when courtiers have been here. If anything hath been out of order, and yet every return laughed and been as merry. And how is it, gentlemen? You are well acquainted with this room, are you not?
I had a delicate banquet once on that table.
In good time, but you are better acquainted with my bedchamber.
Were the cloth of gold cushions set forth at your entertainment?
Yes, sir.
And the cloth of tissue valance.
They are very rich ones.
Refuse me, they are lying rascals. I have no such furniture.
I protest it was the strangest, and yet with all the happiest fortune that we should meet you two at Ware, that ever redeemed such desolate actions. I would not wrong you again for 1,000,000 of Londons.
No? Do you want any money? Or, if you be in debt, £100 in the subsidy, command me.
Alas, good gentleman, did you ever read of the like patience in any of your ancient Romans?
You see what a sweet face in a velvet cap can do. Your citizens' wives are like partridges. The hens are better than the cocks.
I believe it in truth. Sir, did you observe how the gentlewoman could not contain herself when she saw us enter?
Right.
For thus much I must speak in allowance of her modesty. When I had her most private, she would blush extremely.
I warrant you and ask you if you would have such a great sin lie upon your conscience as to lie with another man's wife?
In truth, she would.
I tell you, there were maids enough in London if a man were so viciously given, whose portions would happen to husbands, though gentlemen gave the first onset.
You are a merry old gentleman in faith, sir. Much like to this was her language.
And yet you let clip you with as voluntary a bosom as if she had fallen in love with you at some Inns of Court revels, and invited you by letter to her lodging.
Your knowledge, sir, is perfect without any information.
I'll go see what my wife is doing. Gentlemen, when my wife enters, show her this ring, and 'twill quit all suspicion.
Exit Mayberry.
Austere Luke Greenshield, will thy wife be here presently?
I'm lost.
I left my boy to wait upon her.
Okay. I left my boy to wait upon her. By this light, I think God provides. For if this citizen had not, out of his overplus of kindness, proffered her diet and lodging under the name of my sister, I would not have told what shift to have made, for the greatest part of my money is revolted. We'll make more use of him. The horse and rich innkeeper of Doncaster, her father, showed himself a rank ostler. To send her up at this time, and by the carrier too. 'Twas what a jack's trade of him.
But you have instructed her to call you brother.
Yes, and she'll do it. I left her at a bosom's inn. She'll be here presently.
Enter Mayberry.
Master Greenshield, your sister is come. My wife is entertaining her. By the mass, I have been upon her lips already.
Enter Mistress Mayberry and Kate.
Lady, you are welcome. Look you, Master Greenshield, because your sister is newly come out of the fresh air, and that to be pent up in a narrow lodging here in the city may offend her health, she shall lodge at a garden house of mine in Moorfields, where, if it please you and my worthy friend here to hear her company, your several lodgings and joint commons to the poor ability of a citizen shall be provided.
God, sir.
Nay, no compliment. Your loves command it. Just to dinner, gentlemen. Come, Master Bellamont.
Exeunt Mayberry and Bellamont.
I'll be the gentleman usher to this fair lady. Here is your ring, mistress. 1,000 times I have thought on you, missed, and would have willingly lost my best of maintenance that I might have found you half so tractable.
Sir, I am still myself. I know not by what means you have grown upon my husband. He is much deceived in you, I take it. Will you go into dinner? God, that I might have my will of him, and if it were not for my husband, I'd scratch out his eyes presently.
Exeunt wife and Greenshield.
Welcome to London, bonny Mistress Kate. Thy husband little dreams of the familiarity that hath passed between thee and I, Kate.
No matter if he did. He ran away from me, like a base slave as he was, out of Yorkshire, and pretended he would go the island voyage. Since I ne'er heard of him till within this fortnight. Can the world condemn me for entertaining a friend that am so like an infidel?
Not, but if your husband knew of this, he'd be divorced.
He were an ass, then. No wise men should deal by their wives as the sale of ordnance passeth in England. If it break the first discharge, the workman is at the loss of it, the second, the merchant and the workman jointly, if the third, the merchant. So, in our case, if a woman prove false the first year, turn her upon her father's neck. If the second, turn her home to her father, but allow her a portion. But if she hold pure metal 2 year, and fly to several pieces in the third, repair the ruins of her honesty at your charges. For the best piece of ordnance may be cracked in the casting, and for women to have cracks and flaws, alas, they are born to them. Now I have held out 4 year. Doth my husband do any things about London? Doth he swagger?
Oh, as tame as a fray in Fleet Street when there are nobody to part them.
I ever thought so. We have notable valiant fellows about Doncaster. They'll give the lie and the stab both in an instant.
You like such kind of manhood best, Kate.
Yes, in troth. For I think any woman that loves her friend had rather have him stand by it than lie by it. But I pray thee, tell me, why must I be quartered at this citizen's garden house, say you?
The discourse of that will set thy blood on fire to be revenged on thy husband's forehead piece.
Enter Bellamont and Mistress Mayberry.
Will you go into dinner, sir?
Will you lead the way, forsooth?
No, sweet. Forsooth, we'll follow you.
Exeunt Featherstone and Kate.
Oh, Master Bellamont, as ever you took pity upon the simplicity of a poor abused gentlewoman, will you tell me one thing?
Anything sweet, Mistress Mayberry.
Aye, but will you do it faithfully?
As I respect your acquaintance, I shall do it.
Tell me then, I beseech you, do not you think this minx is some naughty pack whom my husband hath fallen in love with, and means to keep under my nose at his garden house?
No, upon my life, is she not?
Oh, I cannot believe it. I know by her eyes she is not honest. Why should my husband proffer them such kindness that have abused him and me so intolerable, and will not suffer me to speak? There's the hell on't. Not suffer me to speak.
Hey, fie! He doth that like a usurer that will use a man with all kindness, that he may be careless of paying his money upon his day, and afterwards take the extremity of the forfeiture. Your jealousy is idle. Say this were true, it lies in the bosom of a sweet wife to draw her husband from any loose imperfection, from wenching, from jealousy, from covetousness, from crabbedness, which is the old man's common disease, by her politic yielding. She may do it from a crabbedness, for example. I have known as tough blades as any are in England, broke upon a feather bed. Come to dinner.
I'll be ruled by you, sir, for you are very like mine uncle.
Suspicion works more mischief, grows more strong, to sever chaste beds than apparent wrong.
Exeunt wife and Bellamont at end of the act. There's a lot going on here, but also it's a lot of it's you're not quite sure what's going on here as well. This is quite fiddly. I just picking up on the very close of play because that's the bit I sort of latched onto, probably because it's the end of the scene. It's interesting that we had this whole question of Mayberry being being given, as far as he's concerned, evidence of his wife's indiscretions, and now the wife's fearing Karoulla on in reverse. So there's something interesting going on there about the insecurities in their relationships. So there's something sort of the back and forth between them that's interesting. Lynn,
has anybody figured out who is Kate? Is she Mayberry's mistress, or is she Bellamont or not Bellamont, Featherstone or Greenshield's girlfriend? Like, who is she?
well, there is some data from sort of externally from the performative text that I'm not going to go to that we have got access to. But in terms of what the text tells us, I don't know. Did the text tell us who she was really, or did we miss it? Was it so subtle that I missed it? Did it in dialogue stuff? Sarah, then Eric. See if anyone's got a response on that.
Well, ostensibly she's Greenshield's sister.
We know that's not true, right?
That's I mean, that I assume is not true. But I had a line about how I'd already kissed her, so I'm wondering if she's actually my mistress, and the wife suspicions at the end there were correct. I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, but people kiss each other all the time. It's very common. It's very common.
I'm guessing I'm guessing she's maybe not Greenshield's. Like, she's maybe Greenshield's mistress, or like, he's passing her off. I don't know. Yeah, he's passing her off as her sister just so that he can be with her, I assume.
I'll go to Lois, then Alexandra.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of spelled out here with Featherstone saying, welcome to London, thy husband, little dreams of the familiarity that hath passed between thee and I, Kate. And then she says that her husband has run away from her, claiming he was going to go on the island voyage, which I think was an expedition that the Earl of Essex conducted. And I can't remember exactly when that was. And that I never heard of him till within this fortnight. And I don't know if this is Greenshield they're talking about, that she's only just been reunited with him. But Mayberry is somehow accepting her as a tenant and treating her extremely well, to Mistress Mayberry's understandable annoyance, and for reasons of his own, which I don't think he's really explained yet. This is all part of a kind of long game that he and with Bellamont's assistance, I think, are playing.
Yes, because Bellamont isn't desperately clear in why you she goes to him and says, what's going on? He says, well, it's sort of just some words. Here are some words. These words will go on. They're not very helpful words, but they're words, and hey, I've learnt them. Alexandra.
There is a question of who is playing whom and by how much, because earlier in the dialogue, we actually get Featherstone asks Greenshield, will thy wife be here presently? And Greenshield says, yes, basically. And if this other guy isn't going to offer her diet and lodging under the name of my sister, I don't know what I would have done. So her father is an innkeeper of Doncaster who sent her to her husband so as not to keep looking after her. And it's what a terrible time of year to do that. It's all in Greenshield's speech. And then Featherstone asks, have you instructed her to call you brother? Yes, and she'll do it. So the two of them, the two men, know who she is actually, and know that there's some sort of ruse that's been agreed. When just before she turns up, Mayberry says, by the mass, I have been upon her lips already. And then a few lines later, Featherstone says, your husband has no idea what's been going on between us. So how many, like, she's deceived with Greenshield's agreement and Featherstone's knowledge, she's pulling one line of deceit by pretending to be Greenshield's sister, not his wife, and then without his knowledge and potentially without them knowing about each other, she's going about seducing or at least presenting herself as available to both Featherstone and Mayberry, and complaining with her husband in the room that her husband has abandoned her and all this. So there's something really weird going on.
Yeah,
But
it's
interesting.
Who's conning who and why? Sorry, I didn't go to Eric earlier. Eric.
Yeah, I had understood that basically his wife turns up to pretend that, like, Greenshield's wife pretends to be his sister. So maybe when she complains that she's not seen her husband in months or whatever, it's actually her in the role of sister.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It again. We had this at the very opening of the play with these characters, in fact, of going, hang on, you are delivering exposition, but it's not immediately clear what's going on. And again, it's the way also Mayberry's talking about the reception he's giving these people. You know, he opens with this gambit about saying, you know, we're going to feast them royally, like you would for out of towners coming in to see the Lord Mayor's show, which is what the reference to Simon and Jude's Day and the pageant, which, you know, a time of hospitality. But of course, for a modern audience, that we know it because we've done a Lord Mayor's show. We've done all the Lord Mayor's shows, but you know, we've actually enacted one. So again, it's this sort of elements of the text that are decoding, and whether we need to do more for an audience to actually decode what they're saying. Because a lot of the time they're actually being very clear, it's just time has not been kind. Alexandra.
Related to that, there's something that we've been discussing in the chat about, is that an aside maybe? Is that other line an aside? I think in performance, there would be much more clarity just based on how people are interacting and who is within earshot of whom and how secretive some of the conversations are.
And there are various other bits of coding that's going on in here that I'm not sure we're fully unpacking. I mean, it's packing a lot in a complicated scene, and it's the kind of thing you'd have a lot of fun workshopping and pulling this whole text apart, whether it be fun as an engaging bit of theatre. Because the thing is, I'm sort of going here, what's actually happened in this scene? Has anything happened apart from some people have entered, introduced themselves and been a bit disgruntled? I'm sort of thinking, what's moved on? And I keep having this with scenes of going, things have moved on, but it doesn't feel like anything's moved on. And it's really weird. I'll go to Alan, then Alexandra, then we'll move on.
I think what it is let's introduce a bit more confusion as something that may become more relevant later on. You know, it's an extended setup, effectively.
Well, we still are, it is Act 2, so I suppose that there is still room for that. Alexandra, then Lois.
In answer to your question, what has happened? So, two things have happened. We're about halfway through the play, and we're introducing a new character with another 2.5 cons going. So, and the other thing is the thing that we started by mentioning, the wife's suspicion, which I think is really interesting, actually, that after she's been falsely accused and then really easily forgiven, but told not to say anything about it, she'd be right to have... I love the fact that this is so modern. She'd be right to be suspicious, to kind of go, hang on a second, why isn't he going after them? Why is he making me pretend that I'm fine? And why is he bringing this random woman into my house? So that's actually, I found that very contemporary, very well observed, and kind of potentially very, very resonant with a contemporary person's reaction.
Yes, in that sense that I feel more grounded with Mayberry and his wife than I am with the other people in this scene. We never felt very grounded with Greenshield or Featherstone. You know, they were in the first scene and we knew they were wrong-uns, but we never really felt we were in with them. Whereas I feel, that element of that scene really lands because I feel like we know who they are. Lois.
Yeah, I was thinking that the key to the scene is clearly that Mayberry and his wife are manipulating the whole thing, although she's doing it very unwillingly. And I mean, I probably could have made even more of these bits where she's being terribly nice to them and then saying how she actually hates their guts. And Mayberry also has asides and, is on the one hand being incredibly sycophantic to these gentlemen, and on the other hand, planning to wreck them if he possibly can. I mean, I think that's the kind of through line. And Bellamont is presumably in on this to some extent, but I can't make out really whether at the end he does know what Mayberry is doing or whether he doesn't, but is just sort of talking to appease Mistress Mayberry anyway.
Yes, it's an interesting question because Bellamont's sort of been referred to as this poet sort of, this older, and though he's not writing in verse here, you do feel like maybe he's just saying words. That's what he does. He just spouts monologues because he did at the very beginning of the play. So I just wonder about that. And yes, I do love the line from Bellamont. Why does she leave? Why's your wife just left? She's only just come on. And it's like, did you not? Oh, she gets very stressed during parties. Which I quite like that moment. Anyway, we've had a little interval. They've trimmed the candles. They've maybe played some music. We go into Act 3 and find out where we are with this unit of action. Act 3, Scene 1. Enter Dole, Chartley, Leverpool, and Philip.
Come, my little punk, with thy two compositors to this unlawful painting house. Thy pounders and my old poetical dad will be here presently. Take up thy state in this chair, and bear thyself as if thou wert talking to thy apothecary after the receipt of a purgation. Look scurvily upon him, sometimes be merry, and stand upon thy pantoffles like a new elected scavenger.
And by, melancholic like a tilter who broke his staves foul before his mistress.
8, for he takes thee to be a woman of great count. Mark, upon my life, he's come.
Philip retires, but he's still going to be in the scene to make comments.
See who knocks. Thou shalt see me make a fool of... thou shalt see me make a fool of the poet. Make a fool of a poet that hath made 500 fools.
Please, your new ladyship, he's come.
Is he? I should, for the more state, let him walk some 2 hours in and out of room if I did owe him money, 'twere not much out of fashion. But come, enter him. Stay, when we are in private conference, send in my tailor.
Enter Bellamont, brought in by Leverpool.
Look you, my lady's asleep. She'll wake presently.
Come not to teach us starling, sir. God be with you.
Nay, in truth, sir, if my ladyship but dream you had been here.
Who's that keeps such a prating?
'Tis I, madam.
I'll have you preferred to be a crier. You have an excellent throat for it. Pox of the poet, is he not come yet?
He's here, madam.
Cry you mercy. I have cursed my monkey for shrewd turns 1,000 times, and yet I love it never the worse, I protest.
'Tis not in fashion, dear ladies, to call the breaking out of a gentlewoman's lips scabs, but the heat of the liver.
So, sir, if you have a sweet breath and do not smell of sweaty linen, you may draw nearer. Nearer.
I am no friend to garlic, madam.
You write the sweeter verses a great deal, sir. I have heard much good of your wit, master poet. You do many devices for citizens' wives. I care not greatly, because I have a city laundress already. If I get a city poet, too, I have such a device for you. And this it is.
Enter Tailor.
Welcome, Tailor. Do but wait till I dispatch my tailor, and I'll discover my device to you.
I'll take my leave of your ladyship.
Now, prithee, stay. I must have you sweat for my device, master poet.
He sweats already, believe it.
A cup of wine there. What fashion will make a woman have the best body, Tailor?
A short Dutch waist with a round Catherine wheel farthingale, a close sleeve with a cartouche collar, and a pickadille.
And what meat will make a woman have a fine wit, master poet?
Fowl, madam, is the most light, delicate, and witty feeding.
Foul, sayest thou. I know them that feed of it every meal, and yet are as arrant fools as any are in a kingdom, of my credit. Hast thou done, Tailor? Now, to discover my device, sir, I'll drink to you, sir.
That's precious. We ne'er thought of her device before. Oh, pray God it be anything tolerable.
I'll have you make 12 posies for a dozen of cheese trenchers.
Oh, horrible.
In Welsh, madam?
Why in Welsh, sir?
Because you will have them served with your cheese, lady.
I will bestow them, indeed, upon a Welsh captain, one that loves cheese better than venison, for if you should but get 3 or 4 Cheshire cheeses and set them a-running down Highgate Hill, he would make more haste after them than after the best kennel of hounds in England. What think you of my device?
Oh God, a very strange device and a cunning one.
Now he begins to eye the goblet.
You should be akin to the Bellamonts. You give the same alms, madam.
Oh, faith, I paid sweetly for the cup, as it may be you and some other gentlemen have done for their arms.
Same.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, no, wait a minute. Was I wrong?
No, you're not. Sorry.
That's all right. Ha! The same weight, the same fashion. I had 3 nests of them given me by a nobleman at the christening of my son Philip.
Philip discovers himself.
Your son is come to full age, sir, and hath ta'en possession of the gift of his godfather.
Ha! What thou wilt not kill me?
No, sir, I'll kill no poet, lest his ghost write satires against me.
What's she? A good Commonwealth's woman, she was born.
For her country, and has borne her country.
Hearts of virtue, what make I hear?
This was the party you railed on. I keep no worse company than yourself, father. You were wont to say venery is like usury, that it may be allowed, though it be not lawful.
Wherefore come I hither?
To make a device for cheese trenchers.
I'll tell you why I sent for you. For nothing but to show you that your gravity may be drawn in. White hairs may fall into the company of drabs, as well as red beards into the society of knaves. Would not this woman deceive a whole camp in the Low Countries, and make one commander believe she only kept her cabin for him, and yet quarter 20 more in it?
Prithee, poet, what dost thou think of me?
I think thou art most admirable, brave, beautiful whore.
Nay, sir, I was told you would rail, but what do you think of my device, sir? Nay, but you are not to depart yet, master poet. Wouldst sup with me? I'll cashier all my young barnacles, and we'll take over a piece of mutton and a partridge wisely.
Sup with thee, that art a common undertaker. Thou dost promise nothing but watchet eyes, bombast calves, and false periwigs.
Prithee, come thy beard with a comb of black lead, it may be I shall affect thee.
Oh, thy unlucky star, I must take my leave of your worship. I cannot fit your device at this instant. I must desire to borrow a nest of goblets of you. Verily, I would some honest butcher would beg all the queens and knaves in the city and carry them onto some other country. It's better than beeves and calves. What a virtuous city would this be then? Marry, I think there would be a few people left in it. It's foot gold with cheese trenchers! Yoked entertainment with a tailor! Good.
Exit Bellamont.
How dost, doll?
Scurvy. Very scurvy.
Where shall sup, wench?
I'll sup in my bed. Get you unto your lodging, and come when I send for you. Oh, filthy rogue that I am.
Ah, how, Mistress Dorothy?
St. Anthony's fire light on your Spanish slops. Odds life, I'll make you know a difference between my mirth and my melancholy, you panderly rogue.
We observe your ladyship.
Hmm.
The punk's in her humour, Pax.
Exuent all but dull.
Oh, humour you and you pox me. Odds life, have I lined with a Spaniard of late that I have learnt to mingle such water with my Malaga? Oh, there's some scurvy thing or other breeding. How many several loves of players, of vaulters, of lieutenants have I entertained, besides a runner of the ropes? And now, to let blood when the sign is at the heart. Should I send him a letter with some jewels in it? He would requite it as lawyers do that return a woodcock pie to their clients when they sent them a basin and a ewer. I will instantly go and make myself drunk till I have lost my memory. Love, a scoffing poet.
And exit and close of the scene, opening of Act 3. Yeah, again, it's interesting what Philip is trying to do here, and Dol is trying to do here to sort of turn to turn Bellamont round. Is he trying to do it, or is he just trying to throw it in Bellamont's face? I'm slightly unsure what he thought the outcome of this maneuver was going to be. I mean, I just can't see him being happy of going, hi, look, you're eating off all your own stuff. How is he going to be pleased by that? So what was the expected result from this? I'm very confused. Lois.
Yeah, I find it confusing too. I mean, he's noticing with pleasure that Bellamont is noticing that this is his own stuff that they've apparently pilfered or borrowed from him. And why would he want him to notice that right away? Why does he come out and say, anybody could have thought this was a great lady, therefore why are you blaming me for keeping company with her? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Bellamont could simply say what he has said. Yes, you do look absolutely splendid, and you're clearly a sex worker. Why should I be pleased with my son keeping company with you? Yeah, I mean, maybe the point is that Philip is a twit, but the doll appears at the end to have fallen in love with Bellamont, doesn't she?
Yeah, it's very confusing. Lynn?
I think the ostensible reason for this meeting is Philip just wants to prank his father because he's a brat. He just wants to torture his father and make his father uncomfortable. But the plot purpose, the playwright's purpose, is to have Doll, a sex professional, fall in love with this very upright, square-jawed poet. That we might not find the ostensible motivation terribly persuasive, but this is a plot twist that the writers wanted to introduce.
Because I was sort of expecting when the scene started, when they're talking about, I'd like to commission you to write some beautiful verses, and he's sort of talking about, could you write it about cheese? And I was really expecting he was going to do lots of verses about cheese, and there's 12 verses, and he starts doing one. And I thought, this has potential. This could go somewhere really silly, and I'm quite... Because I say, this is the Bellamont, as supposed poet, I mean, he hasn't done a single line of verse. He just seems, he's a bit verbose, but not in even an excessively comic way. I mean, it's slightly confusing what as an actor you're supposed to do with Bellamont throughout this play. And I in that sense, whereas Philip, to a degree, I mean, I think Lois is. And Lynn's point on what he's doing is, perhaps more comprehensible, that he's just pranking his father and messing about here. But it's sort of just like, I'm just going to, unless he hoped that his father wouldn't notice it was his own stuff, and he would actually then buy into the idea that Doll is genuinely rich and high status. Maybe that was, and he sees his father's going, hang on, that looks familiar. I've got a set like this at home.
It's even got my coat of arms on it.
Yeah. So, it was a genuine plan. It just wasn't very well thought out. So
maybe the idea is that Philip is desperately trying to make it look as if this has been a triumph on his part, when in fact it's been a complete failure.
Yeah, because on Philip's point, Philip wants to, be associated with Doll and has bought into her on some level, and he's trying to sell that to his to Bellamont. But yeah, it's not working. It clearly isn't working from the beginning. Yeah, Lois.
On top of that, I mean, both Bellamont and Mayberry are referred to as old several times. So it's even more ironic if Doll is losing interest in Philip and falling in love with his father.
Well, he might be falling in love with his plate. Just going, hang on, there's some good stuff here. Lynn, then Alexandra.
I think you can finesse that age different. Philip is 19 and his father's 40-ish, and so and Doll is 25, 30-ish. So it doesn't have to be this beautiful, comely young woman falling in love with like a 70-year-old. Perfectly possible to be in the prime of one's life and the father of an adult son in this period.
Yes, I got the impression that the dolls. There was an indication of being slightly older than that in the text earlier, but I'm not sure on that point. I don't think it really matters. I think there's definitely an age gap between Doll and Philip of a reasonable distance. Alexandra.
Just really quickly relating to the age thing, I think you can probably cast it in whatever way you want it to seem right. So, you either bring her and Philip really close in age, and therefore this is weird and disgusting, or you bring her and Bellamont close in age, in which case the other side is weird and disgusting. And there's something else that I wanted to point out, which is, again, I found interesting as a thing we could bring modernity in along with, bring modern audiences to go along with. I cannot words, I do apologize. Which is the notion that what they were possibly expecting is that he would get angry and, "Nay, sir, I was told you would rail." And that actually what he's doing, with his reaction is in fact much calmer and much more sort of reasonable, and even though he calls her a whore, he also calls her admirable, brave, and beautiful. So the notion that this is a person they were expecting to massively piss off, and he's actually being very kind to them in response, and potentially being a human that treats Doll like a human rather than a sex object, might be new and interesting, and something that she's she could latch on to, and you could in a modern production kind of give again, if that's the direction you wanted to take it, if you wanted to make this look like a pairing that people should root for, position it in a place of kindness and of positive treatment, positive behavior. But in terms of what they were thinking, what they were planning, and the goblets situation, I can't remember, did we not get any indication between Philip and Doll before of the fact that they're planning something to deceive his father? Maybe there's more to mine there.
Yes, we definitely had a planning. They definitely talked about taking the stuff for this encounter. So there was definitely some sort of planning, but I forget whether the details of the logic of the plot.
Well, I don't remember any of them, but maybe we could either mine that section or invent something again in a production. You'd construct something so that this bit makes more sense. And for the viewers at home, for this particular Christmas release, we are recording. It's the height of summer, and I suspect our brains are actually just melting in the heat. Lois.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether, several things here. I mean, Bellamont's line about "thou that dost promise nothing but watchet eyes, bombast calves, and false periwigs." I mean, I think this refers to the effects of syphilis, doesn't it? I mean, you end up with, I think they talk about people being very thin-legged if they sort of develop syphilis, certainly having to wear a wig because their hair is all fallen out, and I guess hollow eyes or. Anyway, and then she says, comb thy beard with a comb of black lead. That's to make his beard, which is presumably gray or white, look black. Maybe I'll love you then, she says. And then I think he may not be angry in this next bit. I mean, it's really hard to know, but that line, I must desire to borrow a nest of goblets of you. Do you think he actually takes all these goblets and goes off with them?
I was thinking that, yes, he just basically scoops them up and grabs them, and because, he's not going to leave them there. That's the point perhaps where he actually explodes. It's because he talks about him railing earlier, but I wonder if he actually is railing. It's almost like disappointed that he doesn't rail. He's actually quite matter of fact. But that's the point when he goes, villainy, scoops up his stuff, I'm off. That might be a nice point.
Yeah, even this you could do is Utsfoot gulled with cheese trenchers and yoked in entertainment with a tailor. I mean, after all, he is a playwright. He's probably thinking, hey, this might make a really good play.
Greg.
No, it's just, I mean, it was interesting. I love what you're saying. I'd forgotten Bellamont was a playwright, and it's just something like, oh yeah, he hasn't spoken anything yet. But I loved the almost deliberate placement of words at the end of the sentences with him, whore, and maybe I was overdoing it, but it did feel like they were deliberately placed in that point in the sentence, so that you just sort of that almost gap, so that the girl was, as Alexandra was wonderfully doing, out of sight, priming herself for the beautiful lady or whatever, and then it was just like, oh.
Which is a reversal game we had yesterday as well, in a different context with Mayberry, of going, in the sense of, expectation of a line going one way, being set up in the previous line, and then immediately going the opposite in the actual response. So it's a sort of set up and then knock down sort of logic. And so Doll's gone off instantly to go make herself drunk till she's lost her memory, which I suppose, if love has struck her down in an unexpected fashion, that seems like a very wise... Doesn't work, but hey, it's worth a go. So we go into Act 3, Scene 2 now, and the expected and hoped for entrance of Leapfrog and Squirrel, a crime-fighting team from the 1970s... No, hang on. Okay, Act 3, Scene 2, enter Leapfrog and Squirrel.
Now, Squirrel, will thou make us acquainted with the jest thou promised to tell us of?
I will discover it, not as a Derbyshire woman discovers her great teeth in laughter, but softly, as a gentleman courts a wench behind an arras. And it is this: young Greenshield, thy master, with Greenshield's sister, lie in my master's garden house here in Moorfields.
Right. What of this?
Marry, sir, if the gentlewoman be not his wife, he commits incest, for I'm sure he lies with her every night.
All this I know, but to the rest.
I will tell thee the most politic trick of a woman that e'er made a man's face look withered and pale, like the tree in Cuckold's Haven in a great snow. And this is it. Thy mistress makes her husband believe that she walks in her sleeps o' nights, and to confirm this belief in him, sundry times she hath risen out of her bed, unlocked all the doors, gone from chamber to chamber, opened her chests, housed among her linen, and when he hath waked and missed her, coming to question why she conjured thus at midnight, he hath found her fast asleep. Marry, it was cat's sleep, for you shall hear what phrase she watched for.
Good. Fourth.
I overheard her last night talking with thy master, and she promised him that as soon as her husband was asleep, she would walk, according to her custom, and come to his chamber. Marry, she would do it so puritanically, so secretly, I mean, that nobody should hear of it.
Is possible.
Take but that corner and stand close, and thine eyes shall witness it.
Oh, intolerable wit. What hold can any man take of a woman's honesty?
Hold? No more hold than of a bull anointed with soap and baited with a shoal of fiddlers in Staffordshire. Stand close. I hear her coming.
Enter Kate.
What a filthy knave was the shoemaker that made my slippers. What a creaking they keep. Lord, if there be any power that can make a woman's husband sleep soundly at a pinch, as I have often read in foolish poetry that there is, now, when it be thy will, let him dream some fine dream or other that he's made a knight or a nobleman or somewhat, whilst I go and take but 2 kisses, but 2 kisses from sweet Featherstone.
Exit Kate.
He may well dream he's made a knight, for I'll be hanged if she do not dub him.
Enter Greenshield.
Was there ever any walking spirit like to my wife? What reason should there be in nature for this? I will question some physician. Neither here, nor here, neither? God's life, I would laugh if she were in Master Featherstone's chamber. She would fright him. Master Featherstone! Master Featherstone!
How now? Who calls?
Did you leave your door open last night?
I know not. I think my boy did.
God's light, she's there then. Will you know the jest? My wife hath her old tricks. I'll hold my life. My wife's in your chamber. Rise out of your bed and see if you can feel her.
He will feel her, I warrant you.
Have you her, sir?
Not yet, sir. Oh, she's here, sir.
So I said even now to myself before God law, take her up in your arms and bring her hither softly for fear of waking her. I never knew the like of this before God law.
Enter Featherstone and Kate in his arms.
Alas, poor Kate. Look, before God, she's asleep with her eyes open. Pretty little rogue. I'll wake her and make her ashamed of it.
Oh, you'll make her sicker then.
I warrant you. Would all women thought no more hurt than thou dost now, sweet villain? Kate! Kate!
But the merry thought of a pheasant.
She talks in her sleep.
The foul-gutted tripe wife had got it and ate half of it, and my colour went and came, and my stomach wombled till I was ready to swoon. But a midwife perceived it, and marked which way my eyes went, and helped me to it. But Lord, how I picked it! 'Twas the sweetest meat, methought.
Oh, politic mistress.
Cry, Kate! Kate!
I beshrew your heart. Lord, where am I?
I pray thee be not frightened.
Oh, I am sick. I am sick. I am sick. Oh, how my flesh trembles. Oh, some of the Angelica water. I shall have the mother presently.
Hold down her stomach, good Master Featherstone. I will fetch some.
And exit Greenshield.
Well dissembled, Kate.
Pish, I am like some of your ladies that can be sick when they have no stomach to lie with their husbands.
What mischievous fortune is this? We'll have a journey to where, Kate, to redeem this misfortune?
Well, cheaters do not win always. That woman that will entertain a friend must as well provide a closet or back door for him as a featherbed.
By my troth, I pity thy husband.
Pity him? No man dares call him cuckold, for he wears satin. Pity him. He that will pull down a man's sign and set up horns, there's the law for him.
Be sick again, your husband comes.
Enter Greenshield with a broken shin.
Oh, I have the worst luck. I think I get more bumps and shrewd turns in the dark. How does she, Master Featherstone?
Very ill, sir. She's troubled with the mother presently. Extremely. I held down her belly even now, and I might feel it rise.
Oh, lay me in my bed, I beseech you.
I will find a remedy for this walking, if all the doctors in town can sell it. 1,000 pounds to a penny, she spoil not her face, or break her neck, or catch a cold, that she may ne'er claw off again. How dost, wench?
A little recovered. Alas, I have so troubled that gentleman.
None in the world, Kate. May I do you any farther service?
An I were where I would be, in your bed. Pray pardon me, was you, Master Featherstone? I should be well, then.
How she rings him by the fingers.
Good night. Pray you give the gentleman thanks for patience.
Good night, sir.
You have a shrewd blow. You were best have it searched.
A scratch, a scratch.
Exeunt Greenshield and Kate.
Let me see. What excuse should I frame to get this wench forth to town with me? I'll persuade her husband to take physic, and presently have a letter framed from his father-in-law to be delivered that morning for his wife to come and receive some small parcel of money in Enfield Chase. had a keeper that is her uncle. Then, sir, he not being in case of travel, will entreat me to go accompany his wife. We'll lie at where all night, and the next morning to London. I'll go strike a tinder and frame a letter present.
And exit Featherstone.
And I'll take the pains to discover all this to my master old Mayberry. There hath gone a report a good while my master hath used them kindly, because they have been over familiar with his wife. But I see which way Featherstone looks. Spook, there's ne'er a gentleman of them all shall gull a citizen and think to go scot-free. Though your commons shrink for this, be but secret, and my master shall entertain thee. Make thee, instead of handling false dice, finger nothing but gold and silver. Wag. An old serving man turns to a young beggar, whereas a young prentice may turn to an old alderman. Will be secret.
God, sir, a secret as rushes in the old lady's chamber.
And exeunt end scene and end act. Potential little interval moment here. There's a lot of fun to be had with this scene in isolation. Actually, I mean, the only real problem with this scene is the setup of Kate has, as we discussed at great length, not been so well handled that we sort of are. It'd be nice to sort of semi-expect this scene, but it sort of comes out of nowhere. But I do love Leapfrog and Squirrel, their sort of discussions and the fact that they're there to commentate and set all this up. And so it works almost in isolation. It's a little scene you could take out and just throw in anywhere because the situation itself is very simple. And that we've got all this poor Kate's stomach's wambling. We haven't had a wamble for a while. It's nice, and it references, of course, to the mother as a term for. I'm not sure, but actually, the specific complaint, or whether it's a more general medical complaint for women. I forget whether there's a specific reference or if it's more generalised. But I don't think we've had it in a drama yet, so I'm not sure it's precise dating either. Lois, do you have any more on that?
I think it means hysteria, doesn't it? I mean, because I think hysteria was thought, I'm not sure if the word actually comes from womb, but I think there's something like that anyway. Yeah, kind of mental state.
Yes, which in the context of someone pretending to have a complaint is it's nice and generic, but also specific in terms of where she might be placed in society. Alan.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a setup here which I don't think we've seen that often in plays, which basically Leapfrog is simply the comic's feed, isn't he? Basically one line and then a 10-line reply from Squirrel.
Yeah, because someone has to be there. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but is pretty much what they're doing here. Because, Leapfrog's going, yeah, I've heard this already, and, oh, there's some more, is there? Yeah, and none of this is news to me, mate, but carry on. It's sort of what he's doing all the way through, isn't it? But it works, and they sort of say, get away with it. This little bit of dissembling. But I say it's a shame because we haven't really established Kate and Featherstone and Greenshield and all of their sort of relationships fully in a way that feels satisfying at this point. But that could be sorted in production. Lynn, then Eric.
Yeah, the mother, or which is short for the suffocation of the mother, is hysteria in this period. Although I think hysteria may also have. The meaning of that might have shifted a little bit, so it doesn't mean this sort of like violent raving, but it's any kind of like mental illness, depression, some kind of mental disorder that we attribute to the fact that the woman's uterus isn't being weighed down with a baby.
Eric.
Yeah, I was wondering about Kate's complaint at the beginning about the shoes and stuff, and then I realized that she's probably trying to creep out of Featherstone, out of her husband's chamber into Featherstone's, or the other way around.
Out of her husband's chamber.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's like sorry, go on.
Because she comes out of Featherstone's chamber, so like maybe I don't know.
Yes, because she's creeping into Featherstone's chamber from her husband's chamber, and of course this opening sort of answers all the questions that we were trying to figure out earlier, of going, yes, she's pretending to be her husband's sister. That is what's going on. So the servant's going, well, this is a bit weird because surely that's incest. So it's sort of it sort of tidies up the not very clearly made plot point earlier in a way that it almost feels like actually someone got this far through the play and either Webster or Dekker turn to the other and say, you weren't very clear in that last scene, mate. Should we tidy it up with a little bit of exposition? Sarah.
I am still not very clear on why she's pretending to be his sister. Like, why could she not just be presented as his wife?
Maybe because he's still hoping to get with Mistress Mayberry, possibly.
But given that she's already married, would it make it any better or worse if he was married?
I don't know. Alexandra, any thoughts?
I think it's to do with the fact that he can't afford to keep her. So when he's talking to Featherstone earlier, he says, you know, her father's basically thrown her at me at the wrong time, and I believe you guys might know better about sort of customs in this time, but if she were a married woman, it would be improper for her to be housed at wherever Mayberry's going to put her up. Whereas if she's my friend's sister, then sure, she can stay at my country house for a little bit, because that's not, you know, in any way inappropriate. And what's currently occurring is, of course, the men are staying there as well. And so she's able to kind of go and stay with her, sleep in her husband's room. But theoretically, they could leave her there in his care as unmarried young woman. And she'd be basically scrounging off, you know, as a couple, they would have agreed that she's going to live off his money, off this other guy's money, and that would be achievable. Whereas if she's a married woman, she'd be under her husband's responsibility, and consequently he would have to put her up, Greenshield.
Lynn.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Or it would be really shameful for Greenfield to say, I can't afford to maintain my own wife. Can you help me out here? So Kate agrees to that because she gets a nice place to live in 3 squares a day. And when she knows her husband's too much of a ne'er-do-well to support her in any kind of reasonable style. The other thing I thought is that Greenfield's just kind of a pimp, and there's a done thing among him, his wife, and Featherstone that Kate is going to try to seduce Mayberry, which will, you know, give them extra sort of ammunition in the propaganda war to get Mrs. Mayberry to cheat on her husband. It's like, well, look, your husband's cheating on you with my sister, my very sister. Get him back by cheating on him with us. So that might be going on too.
It's starting to feel awfully complicated. Eric, then Alan, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I feel also that there's a lot of like physical business that could happen in this scene. I mean, like we've had it in previous scenes as well, but this one is very like, you know, walk on, start pacing or whatever, and then like creep on, and then like pretending to be sick, and then not being sick, and then yeah.
It's the dream talk as well of, you know, having this argument that I really, there was some nice stuff there, you know, and the paranoia about the slippers. The slippers can't be creaking that much. It's just, you know, this paranoia that they are. Alan, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I think we had it set up in scene 1 that effectively Featherstone and Greenshield are both scammers. And what we've got the third part of the scam team. You know, if you recruit a woman to the team, and it becomes probably more effective and less suspicious.
Except at the moment she's scamming one of the scammers, rather than
Well,
the actual Mark. I mean, this is the weird thing about this particular plot. It's not really intersecting with the rest of the plot. It's sort of weirdly tangential and strange. So, anyway, well, maybe we'll gather more when we go into Act 4, which we will now do as we go into Act 4. We've had maybe a little mini breakette. Again, not really many music cues here. They don't seem to care, do they? It's not to say they weren't originally, but they're not surviving in the script that we have. Act 4, Scene 1. Enter Bellamont in his nightcap, with leaves in his hand, his man after him with lights, standish, and paper.
Sir, I'll speak with none.
Not a player?
No, they're shareable. I'll speak with none, although in the mouth of the big company. I'll speak with none. Away! Why should not I be an excellent statesman? I can, in the writing of a tragedy, make Caesar speak better than ever his ambition could. When I write of Pompey, I have Pompey's soul within me, and when I personate a worthy poet, I am then truly myself a poor, unpreferred scholar.
Re-enter his man hastily.
There's a swaggering fellow, sir, speaks not like a man of God's making. Swears he must speak with you, and will speak with you.
Not of God's making. What is he? A cuckold?
He's a gentleman, sir, by his clothes.
Enter him. And his clothes? Clothes sometimes are better gentlemen than their masters.
Enter the captain and the serving man.
Is this he? Seek you me, sir?
I seek, sir, God bless you, for a gentleman that talks besides to himself when he's alone, as if he were in bedlam, and he's a poet.
So, sir, it may be you seek me, for I'm sometimes out of my wits.
You're a poet, sir, are you?
I'm haunted with a fury, sir.
Pray, master poet, shoot off this little pot gun, and I will conjure your fury. 'Tis well, lay you, sir. My desires are to have some amiable and amorous sonnet or madrigal composed by your fury, see you.
Are you a lover, sir, of the 9 muses?
Ow, by God, how to cry.
You are then a scholar, sir.
I have picked up my chromes in Caesar's College in Oxford one day, a while ago.
You are welcome. You are welcome. I'll borrow your judgment. Look, you, sir. I'm writing a tragedy. The tragedy of young Astyanax.
Astyanax tragedy, is he living? Can you tell? Was not Astyanax a Monmouth man?
No, sir. You mistake. He was a Trojan, a great Hector's son.
Hector was grand to Cadwallader when she was great with child. God nudge me. There was one young Stianan of Monmouthshire was mother Greek as any in all England.
This was not he, assure ye. Look, you, sir, I would have this tragedy presented in the French court by French gallants.
By God, your Frenchman will do a tragedy interlude probably well.
It shall be, sir, at the marriages of the Duke of Orleans and Chatillon, the Admiral of France. The stage...
As blood, does Orleans marry with the Admiral of France now?
No, sir, no. They are 2 civil marriages, as I was saying. The stage hung with all the black velvet of what is acted. Myself will stand behind either Duke of Epinon or some other chief minion or so. They shall take some occasion about the music of the 4th act to step to the French king and say, Sire, voilà, il est votre très humble serviteur, le plus sage et divin esprit, Monsieur Bellamont. All in French, thus, pointing at me or you and the learned old English gentleman, Master Bellamont, a very worthy man to be one of your privy chamber or a poet laureate.
But are you sure, Sir Duke Peppernoon will give you such good arts behind your back to your face?
Oh, aye, man. He's the only courtier that I know there. But what do you think that I may come by this?
Gosh, me old France may have died in your debt for this.
I am now writing the description of his death.
Did he die in his bed?
You shall hear. Suspicion is the minion of great hearts. Well, no, I will not begin there. Oh. Imagine a great man were to be executed about the 7th hour in a gloomy morning.
There might be Samson or so, great Goliath that was killed by my countrymen.
Right, sir. As I express it in young Astyanax, now the wild people, greedy of their griefs, longing to see that which their thoughts abhorred, prevented day and rode on their own roofs.
Could the little horse that ambled on the top of poles carry all the people? Else, how could they ride on the roofs?
Oh, sir, 'tis a figure in poetry marked as is followed. Rode on their own roofs, making all neighbouring houses tiled with men. Tiled with men. Tiled with men. Is it not good?
But when we were all tiled with naked men were better.
Oh, you shall hear no more. Pick your ears. Yeah, foul, sir. What are you, sir? Pray.
Captain, sir, and follower of God Mars.
Mars, Bacchus, and I love Apollo. A captain. I pardon you, sir, and captain, would you press me for?
But a witty ditty to a gentlewoman that I'm fallen in with all over head and ears and affections and natural desires.
An acrostic were good upon her name, methinks.
Cross-sticks. I would not be too cross, Master Poet, if it he best to bring her name in question. Her name is Mistress Dorothy Hornet.
Yes. The very consumption that wastes my son, and the aim that hung lately upon me. You love this Mistress Dorothy?
Love her? There is no captain's wife in England can have more love put upon her. Yet I'm sure captains' wives have their bellies full of good men's loves.
Does she love you? Has there passed any great matter between you?
As great a matter as a whole coach and a horse and his wife are gone to and fro between us.
Is she, in faith, Captain, be valiant and tell truth, is she honest?
Honest? God, me, she's as honest as a punk. She's as honest as a punk that cannot abide fornication and lecherous.
Look you, Captain, I'll show you why I ask. I hope you think my wenching days are past. Yet, sir, here's a letter that her father brought me from her and forced me to this day. This very day.
Enter a servant and whispers to Bellamont.
This for some love song to send to me, I hold my life.
This falls out, Pat. My man tells me the party is at my door. Shall she come in, Captain?
Oh, I put her in, I pray now.
Exit servant.
The letter says here that she's exceeding sick and entreats me to visit her. Captain, lie you in ambush behind the hangings, and perhaps you shall hear the piece of a comedy. She comes, make yourself away.
Does the poet play Torkin and cast my Lucretius water to in hugger muggers? If we do, Stianak's tragedy was never so horrible, bloody-minded as his comedy shall be. So his son, Captain Jenkins
hides himself, and we'll pause there before Dame Doll enters. So yes, we have had a scene with some poetry in it. We were talking for ages whether Bellamont is actually ever going to demonstrate his poetryness, and he does suddenly feel like a slightly different character from earlier. It's like suddenly go, oh, hang on, all this stuff we said about him earlier, should we sort of do some of that? And I'm not here to see anyone from any of the playing companies. I'm not here at business. I'm going to do my art. And then the captain turns up, and we have more of the captain shtick that we had last time, that was hilarious last time, and continues to be hilarious this time. Discuss. Lois was waving, and then Greg.
Yeah. I think it's really funny that he isn't willing to see anyone, even someone from the big company, which is presumably the the King's Men, the rival to the company that's putting this play on.
Yes, and quite literally big, as in their actors are physically bigger because they're all adults.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's rather nice. The other thing is that I think at this point, the Bellamont may begin to look like a real poet. I mean, he seems to, he's working on a Greek translation. He's writing a play about somebody who figures in Greek literature. He's also obviously very well up on French and the French court. And all of this fits extremely well with the profile of Chapman, who is one of the three authors of Eastward Ho.
Yes, yes, because we've he's writing a play about Pompey about this time as well. So which we haven't done yet, I think, but is poised to be read. But yeah, absolutely, and in the sense that these three plays that we sort of loosely gang together are sort of responses to each other. So there is a deliberate poking of the bear here, isn't it? Like you try to steal our title and franchise. I know you said in the prologue, oh, it's a coincidence we called our play Eastward Ho. It's got nothing to do with a previous play called Westward Ho. And yeah, this sounds like a deliberate response to that. So. Yes, maybe this is where the topical satire comes in, stuff that ultimately will be meaningless to most people today. But hey, it's fun for us. Greg, then Lynn.
I really, that just adds a whole new luster to that scene. I didn't realize all the ins and outs that you've just said, and actually, I don't know whether Bellamont is how good he is as a poet. He did feel very Mr. Crummles to me, hence my slight declaration, because it just felt like he should be a very bad poet at that. But it's a great scene, and he's still not so much, but he does still seem to like putting words at the end of the sentence, as we said before, which made it rather fun. But no, loved it. Great scene, and I love that I shan't speak to any actors.
To be fair to his verse, he's only given us 4 lines of verse in the entire scene.
Enough to be said.
And there doesn't seem to be anything radically wrong with it. I mean, it's sort of fine. So it's not like he's supposed to be terrible and doing this awful doggerel verse. It seems perfectly legitimate in structure. Lynn?
I just wanted to throw out there that in this period, the poet didn't mean somebody necessarily who wrote poems. It's a creative writer more generally, and I think that Bellamont especially is a poet by temperament, not necessarily by profession. He's a poet in that he's cerebral. He thinks about higher things. He's a bit of a scholar. So poet as a kind of personality type as well as a description of something he does.
And we did have in the first scene, he literally comes on and says, I was out at whatever fair and I saw all these people and I've been making note. He's like he's doing character studies for his next play.
Commonplace book out.
Yeah. And so there's something going on there. Eric.
I admit that I don't always go for like the sort of foreigner jokes, but I did like the whole acrostic. Oh no, you mustn't make her too cross, like it's a love poem, come on.
With that, actually, some of those jokes are not necessarily because he's Welsh, it's just simply that those are sort of slightly specialist terms that a random person might not get, and I think you could make that work with the general tidying around the edges we've already talked about for the captain, where it's a bit awkward at times with his Welshness. Eric again.
The bit I didn't get was the whole, like, by Caesar and it will tiled with naked men twere better. Like, what? Is he suddenly declaring bisexuality or something? Or, I mean, okay, obviously it wasn't invented as a concept, but, like, yeah.
Well, I mean, it is out there. It's just that is that just a sort of classical? I don't know where that bit came in. But so I can't comment immediately on it.
It's right after Bellamont goes making all neighboring houses tiled with men and like sort of it's the whole like little horse amble on the top of Paul's cat. It's basically the lines of verse that we get from him.
Yeah.
Yes, and we have had a horse walk up the top of Paul's, so that is a thing that physically happened. It was Morocco, the Banks's horse, did that. It's an actual thing that happened. I mean, it's easy enough getting the horse up there. It's how you get it down again. That's the tricky bit. Anyway, we will move on because we're still mid-scene. And we have had this situation. Doll's turned up. And Captain's hidden himself for, I'm sure, hilarious results. So we shall see what happens as Doll enters to Bellamont.
Now, Master Poet, I sent for you.
And I came once at your ladyship's call.
My ladyship and your lordship lie both in one manner. You have conjured up a sweet spirit in me, have you not, Rhymer?
Oh, why, Medea, what spirit? Would I were a young man for thy sake?
So would I, for then thou couldst do me no hurt. Now thou dost.
If I were a Junker, it would be no immodesty me to be seen in thy company, but to have snow in the lap of June. Vile, vile! Yet come, garlic has a white head and a green stalk, then why should not I? Let's be merry! Oh, what says the devil to all the world? For I'm sure that thou art carnally possessed with him.
Thou hast a filthy foot, a very filthy carrier's foot.
Oh, a filthy shoe with a fine foot. I stand not upon my foot, I.
What stands he upon then, with a pox? God bless us.
A leg and a calf. I have had better of a butcher 40 times for carrying a body. Not worth begging by a barber surgeon.
Very good. You draw me and quarter me. Fates keep me from hanging.
And, which most turns up a woman's stomach, thou art an old hoary man. Thou hast gone over the bridge a many years, and thou art ready to drop into a grave. What do I see, then, in that withered face of thine?
Wrinkles, gravity.
Wretchedness, grief, old fellow, thou hast bewitched me. I can neither eat for thee, nor sleep for thee, nor lie quietly in my bed for thee.
Blood, I never did see a white flea before. I will cling you.
I was born sure in the dog days. I'm so unlucky. I, whom neither a flaxen hair, yellow beard, French doublet, nor Spanish hose, youth, nor personage, rich face, nor money, could ever breed a true love to any man. And now besotted, doped, and mad for the carcass of a man, and as if I were aboard, no ring pleases me but a death's head.
Says who our women are immen so arsy.
Mad for me! Oh, why if the worm of lust were wriggling within me as it does in others, don't think I'd crawl upon thee! Oh, would I low after thee? Oh, thou art a common calf-bearer!
Bessie!
Are you a town cow and confessing bear calves?
I confess, I have been an inn for any guest.
Pox your stable room. Is your inn a bawdy house now?
I confess, for I have been taught to hide nothing from my surgeon, and thou art he. I confess that old stinking surgeon like thyself, whom I call father, that hornet, never sweat for me. I'm none of his making.
You lie. He makes you a punk horny miner.
He's but a cheater, and... He's but a cheater, and I the false die he plays withal. I pour all my poison out before thee, because hereafter I will be clean. Shun me not, loathe me not, mock me not. Plagues confound thee, I hate thee to the pit of hell, yet if thou goest thither, I'll follow thee. Run! I do what thou canst. I'll run and and ride over the world after thee.
Dress you, mistress salamanders that fear no burning. Let my mare and my mare's horse and my coach come running home again, and run to an hospital and your surgeons, and to knaves and panders, and to the Tibble and his tame too.
Fiend, art thou raised to torment me?
He loves you, Captain, honestly.
I'll have any man, or Kyle, by his ears that says a common drab can love a sentiment honestly. I will sell my coach for a cart to have you to Punk's old Pridewell. I charge you in God, Apollo's name, whom you belong to, seer forthcoming till I come, and to her by and by. Blood, I was never cozened with a more rascal piece of mutton since I came out the lower countries.
And exit the captain.
My doors are open for thee. Begone, woman.
This goat's pizzle of thine.
Away! I love no such implements in my house.
Dost not? Am I but an implement by all the maidenheads that are lost in London in a year, and that's a great oath, for this trick? Other manner of women than myself shall come to this house only to laugh at thee, and if thou wouldst labour thy heart out, thou shalt not do withal.
Exit Doll. Enter servant.
Is this my pen of white and fury? Hello, sir.
Master Mayberry and his wife, sir, in the next room.
What are they doing, sir?
Nothing, sir, that I see, but only would speak with you.
Enter them. This house will be too hot for me. If this wench cast me into these sweats, I must shift myself of pure necessity. Wanted with sprites in my old days.
Enter Mayberry booted with his wife with him.
Ready. A Canterbury tale smells not half so sweet as the comedy I have for thee, old poet. Thou shalt write upon it, poet.
Nay, I will write upon it if it be a comedy, for I have been into most villainous female tragedy. Oh, come, the plot, the plot.
Let your man give you the boots presently. The plot lies in where, my white poet. Wife, thou and I this night will have mad sport in where. Mark me well, wife, in where.
At your pleasure, sir.
Nay, it shall be at your pleasure, wife. Look you, sir, look you. Featherstone's boy, like an honest crack-halter, laid open all to one of my prentices, for boys, you know, like women, love to be doing.
Very good. To the plot.
Featherstone, like a crafty mutton-monger, persuades Greenshield to be run through the body.
Strange, through the body.
Aye, man, to take physic. He does so. He's put to his purgation. Then, sir, what is me Featherstone but counterfeits a letter from an innkeeper of Doncaster to fetch Greenshield, who is needy, you know, to a keeper's lodge in Enfield Chase, a certain uncle, where Greenshield should receive money due to him in behalf of his wife.
His wife? Is Greenshield married? I've heard him swear he was a bachelor.
So have I, 100 times.
The knave has more wives than the Turk. He has a wife almost in every shire in England. This parcel gentlewoman is that innkeeper's daughter of Doncaster.
Has she any entertainments for her forefathers? Will she keep all comers company?
She helps to pass away stale capons, sore wine, and musty provender. But to the purpose, this train was laid by the baggage herself, and Featherstone, who it seems makes her husband a unicorn, and to give fire to it, Greenshield, like an arrant whittle, entreats his friend to ride before his wife and fetch the money, because, taking bitter pills, he should prove but a loose fellow if he went, and so does not go.
And so the poor stag is to be hunted in Enfield Chase.
No, sir, master poet. There you miss the plot. Featherstone and my Lady Greenshield are rid to batter away their light commodities in where? Enfield Chase is too cold for 'em.
In where?
In dirty where? Oh, I forget myself. Wife, on with your riding suit and cry Northward Ho! As the boy at Paul's says, let my prentice get up before thee and man thee to where? Lodge in the inn, I told thee. Spur, cut and away.
Well, sir.
Exit wife.
Stay. What's the bottom of this riddle? What sent you her away?
For a thing, my little hoary poet. Look thee, I smelt out my noble stinker Greenshield in his chamber, and as though my heartstrings had been cracked, I wept and sighed and thumped and bumped and raved and ranted and railed and told him how my wife was now grown as common as Mayberry, and that she had hired her tailor to ride with her to where? To meet a gentleman of the court.
Good. And how took he this drench down?
Like eggs and muscadine at a gulp. He cries out presently, did not I tell you, old man, that she'd win my game when she came to bearing? He rails upon her, wills me to take her in the act, to put her in her white sheet, to be divorced, and, for all his guts are not fully scoured by his apothecary, he's pulling on his boots and will ride along with us. Let's muster as many as we can.
Will be excellent sport. See him and his own wife meeting where, will it not? Aye! We'll have a whole regiment of horse with us.
I stand upon thorns till I shake him by the horns. Come, boots boy! We must gallop all the way, for the sin, you know, is done with turning up the white of an eye. Will you join your forces?
Like a Hollander against a Dunkirk.
March then. This curse is on all lechers thrown. They give horns, and at last horns are their own.
Exuent. I almost feel that's where we would put an interval, because we can say Northward Ho as we leave the scene. Finally, with all of these plays, we wait for the point when you can start saying the title with some sort of dramatic impetus, and it's like suddenly, oh good, something's happening that's moving in the direction of the play, and it's like to dirty wear, filthy wear. Yeah, we've got lots of things. So we have basically this worry scene that goes horribly wrong. Of course, we have the question of the captain: are Imin so arsi varsi? A question for our times. Doll is sent. And then Mayberry comes in and goes, "Hi, exposition. You want to know what's going on? I'm just going to lay out everything that's happened in the first half of the play, broadly speaking. So just in case you were a bit confused by some of the earlier scenes, which weren't fully explicated properly, that's what we've got. Brief thoughts on this section of this scene. Anyone got any thoughts on It's a tricky one because it's full of it's quite unpleasant in many ways. So it's a tricky one for a comedy. Lynn.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed. I had hoped that Doll falling for Bellamont, for basically a really decent person, would be kind of the initiation of a redemption arc for her, and that and she does it in this like, I'm telling you the truth about everything because you're my surgeon. You're the person that's going to cure me that I want to cure me of my badness. So I'm hiding nothing from you, which is really kind of a remarkable scene. But I think it turns out that the only reason for that plot device is it's what gets her caught out by one of her Johns. So so she doesn't fall in love with Bellamont as part of her redemption. It's how she gets caught out being a sex professional and not an actual lady. So I'm a little sad.
Other thoughts on this, Allum?
Yeah, I mean, there's a setup, I think, for some physical business in there with this story about Featherstone having been prescribed a laxative from the sounds of it.
Oh yeah, that's a
I'm sure that gag would have been milked to death in physical action, if not in verbiage.
Alexandra.
I'm just trying to figure out why Mayberry, having had all this business about, those terrible men saying bad things about his wife, finds out that the terrible men have gone in a general direction and sends his wife ahead of himself in the same direction. I didn't get that, and I don't think Bellamont got it, but yes, go ahead.
Greg.
It was only a very small one. There is the wonderful great bed of ware in what it was in the Victorian Albert Museum, and I think it was referenced at this point anyway. So I'm just thinking that would have added a whole great fun to this scene, because I'm sure the jokes came around a bit, and I just love the fact that Bellamont there was so much fun had with a simple place name.
Yeah, well, because we had when they first bring up the bed of bring up ware. They don't explicitly bring up the bed of ware, but it was in a scene where they talk about the cloth of gold as well. As I was sort of going, are these deliberate Henry VIII references that are being fed into this text? And but I'm not sure how much that was part of the lexicon of the time. So I'm not sure whether that's a totally erroneous thing that we're applying on top of this. I don't know. I don't have any glosses or thought notes on these things. But it's definitely something that immediately cropped up in my head. But whether that's an erroneous thing that we're just applying onto it, I don't know. We have a mini scene to do before we close the session. So we have one more little scene. We're going to do, I think, I'm just double checking. Yes, we are. Act 4, Scene 2. We have the return of our favourite character, Captain Jenkins, and Allum.
Set the best of your little diminutive legs before and ride post, I pray.
Is it possible that Mistress Doll should be so bad?
Possible. Splunt is more easy for an woman to be not than for a soldier to beg. That's horrible easy.
Aye, but the coney catch us all so grossly.
Their Norfolk tumblers are but zanies to coney catching punks.
She gelded my purse of £50 in ready money.
I will geld all the horses in 500 shires, but I will ride over her and her cheaters and her hornets. She made a stark ass of my coach horse, and there's a putter box whom she spread thick upon her white bread and eat him up. I think she sent the poor fellow to Gelderland, but I will march bravely in and out and pack again. And upon all the low countries in Christendom is Holland, Zealand, and Netherland, and Cleveland too. And I will be drunk and cast with Master Hans van Belch, but I will smell him out.
Do so, and we'll draw all our arrows of revenge up to the head, but we'll hit her for her villainy.
I will throw as petter and as earth's weapons as arrows up to the head. Lug you. It shall be warrants to give her the whip deedle.
But now she knows she's discovered. She'll take her bells and fly out of our reach.
Fly with her pals? I know a parish that style tank down all the pals and sell them to Captain Jenkins to doing good. And if pals will fly, we'll fly too, unless the pell ropes hang us. Will you amble up and down to Master Justice by my side, have this rascal hornet in cotton, and so to make hold their horse peace?
I'll amble or trot with you, Captain. You told me she threatened her champions should cut for her. If so, we may have the peace of her.
Mon Dieu. Sorry, I don't know any Welsh. There's some Welsh here.
Allegedly.
Yes. Follow your leader. Jenkins shall cut in slices worse as they come. I scorn to have any piece of her or any of them but open wars.
And they exit. So we have a scene here. Basically, the suitors of Doll are getting together and are talking to each other, which is the worst thing any con artist wants. Is actually the marks to all get together and go, okay, this is all a con. You know that, don't you? So And again, that doesn't disabuse me of this feels like a good opening for a second half scene. Actually, a nice like to remind people, and also where we were. I think we'd say I found our interval point for a modern production. I like finding the interval point. Sometimes there isn't one, and because it's structurally not helpful. But we've had our Northward Ho, and then we've got a nice light opener to set up a second half. That makes me happy. Unless we find that actually there's a better one later on. Yeah, that seems like a good place to put one. Allum.
Given we're 2/3 of the way through the length of the script, I would have thought that interval is coming a tad late. For comfort point from the audience's point of view.
Oh, we've already decided we're probably going to cut quite a lot from the first half anyway. But you want the first half to be longer than the second half, whatever you do. Yeah, no, I'm reasonably comfortable with that. I don't see. We could do somewhere in Act 3. It could go at the end of Doll's I'm going to go off and drink and lose my memory, and then we open with the Leapfrog and Squirrel scene. That could also work, but it doesn't have the impetus, and we don't have a Northward Ho yet. I don't want to send someone to the interval without someone saying Northward Ho. This is the whole point of turning up to these shows, is to be able to shout at the interval, Northward Ho, as you exit. Otherwise, there's go home. There's no point. So I'm hoping we don't need to cut a lot from the next act and a half, because otherwise we're if we have to cut a lot of it, then that plan is all out of the window. Anyway, Lynn.
Yeah, you do want your first act to be longer, but you don't want to be too imbalanced. I mean, granted, it was a tragedy, but I was at a production of an early modern play where the interval was quite late. In the evening, and a good chunk of the audience didn't show up for the second, didn't come back after the interval, because they were, oh my god, if the second half is close to this long, we're going to be here till midnight, and I can't deal with that. So it was a tragedy. So yeah, it was people might be even more motivated not to show up for the second half if things are just going to be sad and awful. But yeah, you don't want to be too imbalanced.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping we basically get a sustained comedy farcical action for the rest of the play. But then we may find that that's not what happens in the final act, and everything I've just said is nonsense. But that felt like a moment. But yeah, I mean, we're basically going into final thoughts now, broadly speaking. But do throw in anything to the final scenes if you haven't had your piece. There is this. Question really of actually cuts. I mean, how much we might be trimming out of this. We've talked about salami edits already, just for clarity. But also, I found that quite a lot of this middle section of the play, I'm sort of going, there's an awful lot of stuff, and I'm not sure it's moving us forward. I'm a little flaily here, as this introduction of Kate as a character. In a slightly unsatisfactory way. I feel we need to introduce Kate in a better way, and that might even be down to actually writing a Kate introduction scene, or even if it's just a few lines, but it feels like she just comes out of nowhere. So there are some imbalances here. That it's not just necessarily about trims, that there is actually some slightly more detailed dramaturgical work that might happen with this one, which I don't think we've had for the previous two Ho plays. There's definitely work needed to do for those, but they've been mostly trims and tidy ups. Whereas this feels a bit more fundamental. I'm not getting an impetus to this play. I'm not getting a momentum to it. But then maybe it's not trying to do that, and I'm just missing the point. So yeah, final thoughts around the room about this play so far. I'm still slightly struggling to grab hold of it. I'm reminded of what Lois said before we came on camera at the very first session, which was basically the play might be too subtle at times. I get your point. Lois, do you have any final thoughts with that lead in?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think part of the problem is it does read a bit like several stories from jest books kind of put together. I mean, the whole sleepwalking plot is clearly, I would imagine, turns up in some jest book as well. How a woman cuckolded her husband by pretending to be walking in her sleep into somebody else's room. And, we've had the other story, which Webster has kind of ingeniously twisted to turn it into a false story and the sort of springboard. Yeah, I find some of the doll plot pretty tedious. I mean, I'd really be rather tempted to cut that whole encounter in this last scene between Doll and Bellamont and just have the gulls get together and expose her, between the acts and and plot revenge. I mean, I don't even know what they're going to do or what's going to happen there, but and maybe she's going to try to get revenge on Bellamont for not loving her. But I find that's a really rather unpleasant plot. I mean, she says she's in love with Bellamont. He says that what you'd expect, that she's a sex worker and he's not interested in any way. He's too old. I mean, he's sensible enough to realize that this whole thing is not going to lead anywhere, but he's a bit rude to her. I mean, one could play him, I think, as much more kind of genial and relatively polite. But after all, he does, whatever you do, he's dismissing her. And then, I don't know, that whole bit with Jenkin, a lot of that is just not very appealing. Whereas I think the basic line that these two guys defame Mistress Mayberry just because she hasn't been willing to sleep with either of them, and then and that she and her husband take revenge on them, presumably by in some ways exposing whatever is going on between Featherstone and Greenshield and Kate, does make a certain sense. And then along with this, there's this kind of, I think, fairly genial satire on Chapman, which is going to develop more in the next bit.
Yeah, and we have done some Chapman, but we haven't, in a sense, done the kind of Chapman that I think they're satirising here. So it's because we've been mostly doing his comedy rather than his tragic tomes, which, to be fair, there's quite a lot more to come. So, they can see which way the wind is blowing, I suppose, with Chapman, because he's done some translation, I think, by this point, hasn't he? Which is setting up, which is much more what probably they're satirising here than his dramatic stuff.
He's really famous by this time. I mean, he's one of the most esteemed poets, I think, because he has translated Homer. A lot of the books of the Iliad have already been published, and since practically nobody knew Greek, for somebody to know Greek and translate Greek was really prestigious.
So in dramatic terms, we haven't really encountered him in that way at all. He's been occasionally successful as a comedy writer and occasionally less successful in other instances. But hey, more to come. I'm sure we'll dip into the wider literature. We haven't done much in the way of epic poetry yet, but I'm sure maybe we'll have a go. I'm sure Leaky would like us to do it. Alan, any final thoughts?
It's all a bit of a mess at the moment, I think. And before we start trying to work out what can be cut, I think we're going to have to get through to the end of the next session, just to see what actually has been prefigured and is necessary, and which was just side diversions. And I suspect that quite a bit of this, taking the mickey out of the Dutch, taking the mickey out of the Welsh, was there just as groundling fodder.
Don't have them in private theatres.
No, but you appreciate where I'm coming from. It's basically, let's be Londoners. Let's laugh at all these strange people from out with the capital.
The question of what to do with those characters, is becoming more important now. Is that certainly they are returning and having a more active role, but I don't think their individual characteristics as their nationalities or matters in terms of the plot, actually very much. So yeah, I think you're right. The problem we've got here is we don't really know what the text is trying to do. I'm not sure what the joke is. I'm not sure what the plot is, because plot elements just seem to happen, and I'm not sure why they're happening a lot of the time. So I think we need to really have a firm line on what the play is trying to do and then what our production is trying to do, because until we really know what the play is trying to do, we can't really decide what our production is trying to do, because we're not really sure what it's doing, and that makes it really difficult to assess, because I like to say, we've done texts where I've said, well, the play isn't trying to do that, it's trying to do this thing, and it does this thing quite well. Well, I don't know what this thing is. I don't know what it's doing yet. The moment will come when I'll go, I've had an idea. We shall see. Eric, any final thoughts? You were here yesterday, even though you were invisible to the viewers at home. Final thoughts on the play so far? Are you just doing mime? Is that
I was hiding about as well as the captain, I think. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of divided because I do like, I can see what it's doing with the jokes, but then I'm like, I don't really, and like I do like we said, the scene with the what's it called, with Greenshield's wife and Featherstone is like, just the way it's set up, you can see what it's doing there. It's funny-ish, I guess. Like sort of saying, oh, I know all the tricks for women that don't like to sleep with their husbands. It's like, it's still a modern thing, pretend to have a headache. I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where this play is going, and I want to find out, just because like I'm enjoying the ride at the moment, aside from the misogyny and the usual stuff that we usually get.
Yeah, I mean, it's this thing. We're just talking about Kate. We've discussed at length in various different contorted ways as to why she's pretending to be his sister, but there isn't a one-line explanation why he's pretending. Yeah, we haven't just had this. It's like, well, it could be this in confusion with this and this and this. It's not a clear line. But hey, maybe we'll get one tomorrow. Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I approve of Lois's idea that maybe we just cut the business of Doll falling in love with Bellamont, because it's just so unpleasant that, yeah. And maybe have, like, just cut that and then have a scene of her and the captain has to hide, and then Hans comes in. So what the captain overhears is a conversation with another one of her clients, not with Bellamont. Just leave Bellamont out of that she gets caught because it's really hard to keep that many plates spinning at one time, and then the three boyfriends get together and plot revenge. I think it's going to be easier to take if something very bad happens to her in the end, if she never showed that kind of vulnerability that she did by falling for Bellamont. So yeah, unless that works out in a way that I'm not expecting, I would get rid of that.
Well,
yeah.
I think the problem with the Doll and the Bellamont scene is that he deliberately sets the captain up to be in the other room. If the captain just happened to overhear that'd be a very different scene, I think, in many ways. I need to review the dialogue again to be sure of that. But it's the fact that he deliberately sets the captain to overhear it and basically makes all that come down that makes him he's doing that on purpose, and that is an impulse that sort of says very poorly on Bellamont, that in a way that we haven't really had earlier. But he's quite a different character in that scene, full stop. Because they're doing some Chapman stuff, probably, that suddenly the character shifts in a way that I don't think is wholly consistent with the earlier part in the play. Though, again, that may just be projection on my part. Alexandra, any final thoughts?
Yes, I'm also I'm kind of in opposition to Lynn and also in agreement, in that this scene is meant to be, that particular scene is meant to be uncomfortable, and it's meant to show us this character bearing themselves, becoming vulnerable, and then being kind of punished for it, really. But I think that's on purpose, and I think that's a good thing from a structural standpoint, because we're having this massive shift in what is happening to the character, and also internally and externally. She's being changed as a person, and it's going very tragically for her, which might have been intended as comical, or it might be the sort of tragic counterbalance to how much fun you're having with the rest of this play, audience. Here is a situation that is an inversion in status that is actually hurtful, so that you can stop, laughing, have a moment of, oh, and then go back to laughing for the next scene. So there might be something intended there that we're not kind of getting. But I agree with you, Rob, that it's this today seems to be repainting Bellamont in a completely different set of colors than yesterday was, because yesterday he seemed to be the only sane man and the kind of reasonable party and the good advisor to Mayberry and so on and so forth. Whereas this, the trick here would only kind of seem malicious, which made me think, well, you could have it be Philip that does that. You could switch her around so that she's falling in love with Philip, and he's the one who sets her up because he's a character we dislike. However, again, is there something in the fact that we are watching characters we didn't like do a thing we would like for them and then be punished for it, and characters that we did like behave in ways that we don't like and thrive by it? Is there something in, I guess, the way in which they change rather than the direction in which they change that is actually quite dynamic and quite either intended as something, to teach us, or just intended as the way of making the play dynamic, and that we just haven't, on a first reading, we just haven't put all the pieces together, so it's not making a lot of sense to us. And my other consideration was, I mean, obviously these two are just one set of examples, but there's a lot going on with Featherstone and Greenshield and that side of who is conning whom and who is tricking other, who is on whose side, and then who is conning either the marks or each other within the con, and so on and so forth. Which is a similar situation of do we or do we not like this person? Do we or do we not like what they're doing? And are we having internal conflict because of what we want for them not being what is occurring? And my other consideration was, as you mentioned, Rob, there are still being characters introduced, and there are still being plots introduced, and we're now 2/3 of the way into the play. So I think there's a structural issue there in how, as an audience, how much introduction we are willing to take, and at what point we're now expecting things to be developing and to be coming to a climax and coming to I've forgotten what the word is, but yes, a sort of point of
resolution.
Well, we're before the resolution. We're now at the height of conflict from a structural standpoint, or we should be, and yet the conflict is over there. Let's all run over there.
Let's head Northward Ho
by separate routes. Yeah.
I think, in the sense, we've only had one insignificant character introduced today, and that's Kate. That's the only additional one that matters. We had some additional servant people who turn up, but they're not characters in the sense, and certainly in a production, you'd probably be eliding some of these servants together anyway in some fashion. There is, of course, the point if this is functioning as satire on specific people and specific ideas of people, then maybe looking for people we're supposed to like is entirely missing the point, because we're not supposed to like any of them. And that may be also the problem, that we're trying to project onto this an idea of comedy that is actually not what the play is trying to do. Sarah, final thoughts?
You could be right, but all I would say is if that's what it's trying to do, it's making a poor hash of it, because actually there are lots of likable characters in this play, the women especially, that they're really well written and I'm enjoying them. So I don't know. I thought what Alexandra said about swapping out Bellamont for his son Philip was a really good idea, because the change in Bellamont's character is really irritating me. You know what I'm like. I'm all about the character development, and it seems to me that, like, yesterday he was being created as a character, he was being developed as a person, and then today he's just become a device, whether it's a device for flagging up what Alexandra was talking about and adding that note of discomfort to the audience when they're having a good time. That's kind of assuming that they are having a good time watching this play. Or whether he's there to satirize Chapman. It's like he's been taken from a well thought out character who's actually integrated into the plot, and he's just been like, oh well, we'll just use him to do XYZ, and I'm finding that deeply irritating. So I like the idea of swapping him out for his son. I think that could work.
But it's just before you go on to your next one, it also what his relationship with Mayberry. Previously, he was there to sort of push Mayberry in a direction, whereas in the end of this scene, Mayberry comes in and he's telling Bellamont what's happening.
Yes.
Belmont's going, "What?" And it's like that's not their relationship. Actually, no, it's different.
It's not. It is different. And the thing is, to begin with, he was one of the best characters in it, in terms of the most interesting. In terms of his function in the play, what he was doing, the very fact that we all said yesterday, like, oh, this is unusual. You've got the jealous husband trope has the rug's been pulled out from underneath that one, in the first act, because Bellamont is there to actually be the voice of reason. They were doing something a bit different there and using his character for that. And he just seemed to be quite an interesting character. And that's really bugging me. The fact that he's gone off in a sort of strange tangent. Otherwise, I'm kind of feeling very much what Lois said, and Lynn as well, that I don't want to really cast judgment on this play till I've got to the end. There are things about it that I've really enjoyed. There is a lot about it that I'm finding super tedious, that I would like to, cut. But so much of it is dependent on what happens at the end of the play. If it all comes together and is tied up in an incredibly clever and satisfying and maybe slightly subversive way, if it plays tricks with the audience, because it has done that already to a certain extent, and if it continues to do that and has the sort of ending where you get to the end and you think, oh, nice, that was actually really clever, or oh, I see what the point of that was now. Right, okay, then it will all be worth it. Which isn't to say that there wouldn't still be need for cuts, because I think there absolutely would be. But I don't know if it's going to do that, so I'm just going to wait and see.
My frustration, I think, with this is we had lots of scenes with comic potential, and the potential isn't actually utilized. There are scenes where you've got a setup, you've got these characters together, there are confusions, there are complications, there are things that could happen within those scenes that are fundamentally fun and silly and can be played with while you're moving the plot forward. And what we tend to get is people come on and they're doing something, but it's not really very funny. And I'm not sure if that's just the wit and the verbal play that's happening there is just not landing for us today, and we're not, we may be getting the references, but we're not getting the references, and that's just why it's just not landing in that way. Because we've done other plays where the comedy business really pops and it's silly and it's fun, and we go, oh, you could do this, and there's physical business you can do there, and there's so much potential. I'm struggling to see the extra potential for some of these scenes. I'm struggling to say, well, what's the joke and how far can we push it? Because I'm not quite sure that there is really that much in those scenes as they're coming to us. Alan, and then I'm going to close the session.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether there is uncued visual business going on in some places. And that sleepwalking scene, I think you could probably put in some physical action, which would A, make it clearer, and B, probably provide some comedy that will actually get a laugh, whereas the words don't. necessarily.
Yeah, that sleepwalking scene is the most detachable scene where I'm going. That is a comedy scene where I understand what the joke is within the scene. You don't actually need to know the rest of the play at all for that scene to function entirely on its own. But I've been struggling. I'm always looking for where's the additional physical business. And apart from someone popping their head behind an arras every so often, which this play does continually, there's always someone upstage going, see what he's doing there.
Yeah,
that's it. I can't see more business, and I'm disappointed. Try harder. Not you, the play. Well, on that that particular slight disappointment. But there's still time. There's still potentiality. There's still stuff that could be mined. And in rehearsal and performance, there might be more. And once we know what the play is doing, which hopefully we will have a better idea next time when we go Northward Ho, all that remains is thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. The worm of lust were wriggling within me.